Welcome, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all here. It's such a beautiful place to have a meeting. It's a tragedy that we have to have this meeting indoors. It's beautiful weather outside, but I thank you for coming. I'd like to take this opportunity just briefly to highlight and welcome 4 new members. To my right, new member Smith, representing St. Catharines, welcome. On the end, from Grimsby, new member Bruce McKenzie. From Pelham, Welland, my mistake. Sorry, Tim. John and Grail. And from Fort Erie, Leah Fior. So welcome. After this vigorous meeting that we have planned, you'll be one of us in a very deep sense. So we're thankful for your willingness to come forward and represent your communities. At this time, we have the first motion moved by Member Beattie, seconded by Member Shurton, that the agenda for the full authority meeting of Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority dated June 19 be amended to allow for item 7, closed session, to occur immediately preceding item 3, presentations, and that the agenda be adopted as amended. Any comments or questions? Member Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a comment on this. I'll be voting against the change to the agenda simply because I know what it's like to be on that side of the line. I believe that when citizens come to participate in their democratic institutions, it's incumbent on those of us who control those institutions to accommodate the citizens also. And I know the frustration of sitting on that side of the line and taking the time out of your day to show up to a meeting and then right away be told that you're going outside for 2 hours or an hour and a half. I think that going forward, I'd like to think that we could plan it better to allow the best possible solution, I guess.
Yeah. The CIO would just like to respond briefly to.
Thank you, Member Smith, for the comment, and to the members of the audience. Just a quick rationale, and it's certainly up to the board how they want to move forward. The reason that we follow the agenda order is it's prescribed in our bylaw. And so if we're moving closed session forward, it requires a formal motion of the board. I do understand what it's like to place members of the audience in abeyance. So what we tried to do in that regard is twofold. Those members of the audience that we were speaking to personally, we did advise them personally that we would most likely be going into closed session. The second thing that we did was post it on the website. However, staff will certainly welcome any comments that the board may have as to how we can deal with our agenda better to accommodate the valued members of our public.
Any other comments or questions? Member Shurton?
Yeah, thanks through the chair. I agree with Member Smith here. I know from my last term, I thought it was frustrating too when you get here and you see it. My sense is if it has to be a bylaw change the bylaw. Staff knows the procedure, especially if we got a lawyer or somebody else that's come from out of town where it's important to maybe have them speaking first. Let's have the go close first and have that ability to have it come out on the agenda when the agenda is printed a week in advance. So if it's about changing the bylaw, maybe that's something we can look in our governance committee that I'm on. And I could definitely bring that forward because I do agree if people know that we're going to close first, meeting's going to start at 10:30. That gives the viewing public the opportunity to come later and not have to sit and leave and whatever else. Just a thought.
Yep. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? All those in favor, please again, favor. And that's carried.
Mr. Chair, before we leave that item, if it is the pleasure of the board, we do have a governance committee meeting coming up shortly. The chair of the committee, Member Clark, is not here, but if it is the direction of the board, staff would be pleased to put that item on the agenda for that meeting. Is that the direction of the board, Mr. Chair?
Okay.
Thank you. That's clear.
Okay. Thank you for that. And we're all working together, so, and I only have like one set of eyes and like only one in direction. So I just appreciate that you give a good, vigorous, like, you know, hand up and you keep it up till I kind of view the crowd, just to help me out. Thank you very much. We have any declarations of conflict of interest? Member Wright.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if it's a conflict of interest, but just for full disclosure, I see there's an old staff report that I authored under Section 5D, Report FA 6519, just so people are aware that, yes, that was my report, so I probably won't be just commenting on that, obviously. It was for information purposes.
Okay. Thank you. Any other conflicts of interest, pecuniary or otherwise? Seeing none? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Madam CEO, and I will also be declaring conflict when we go into closed on item 7D. So at that point, I will be vacating the closed session quarters and be out in the hallway.
I'm actually not sure if I am or not, because I didn't get any, I was told I would be contacted, but I didn't get any contact. So I don't know where anything stands. Is it being discussed today?
If I might, Mr. Chair, if I can stand to be corrected, but I did send an email out to all of the board members with regard to the 2 code of conduct complaints, and staff cannot recommend if you should or should not declare a conflict of interest. That is completely up to you. But I thought I had made it clear, and I apologize if I didn't. Yes, those 2 code of conduct complaints, which I'm sure every board of directors should be aware of, are to be considered very briefly in closed session today under item 7D.
If I can follow up, yes, absolutely. Your email was clear, but I was also told I'd be contacted by a lawyer or something and interviewed, and that never happened. So I didn't know if it was therefore being removed from the agenda or not.
If I can clarify, Mr. Chair, sorry. What the board will simply be considering today is how to proceed in responding to the code of conduct complaints. We need to get direction from the board as to how you wish us to proceed. That's all that the board will be dealing with today. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so I would like to declare a conflict too for item 7D for the same thing, and then I'm not sure the language here. I will leave the room when you leave the room.
Yep. We'll be leaving the room together. Yeah. And the rest of you can just imagine. Thank you very much. Then any other further conflicts? Seeing none, we're going to move on to presentations. Oh, okay. So okay. My mistake. Moved by Member Fior and seconded by Member Shurton, that the meeting of the Board of Directors of the NPCA convene in closed session at 9:42 in accordance with Section 11(1) of the NPC Administrative Bylaw for the discussion of matters relating to advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, litigation or potential litigation, labor relations, human resources or employee negotiations, personal matters of unidentifiable individuals, including NPCA employees, and land acquisition report, FA 66-19, property in the vicinity of the Binbrook Conservation Area. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? And that is carried. This meeting is now enclosed. I invite the gallery to exit. We will make preparations, and we'll be sure to let you back in when we're concluded that business. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, to the gallery, if I might. Again, apologize if it wasn't clear that we might go into closed. We have been advised by our lawyer that they will be at least an hour with the board, and we suspect that another at least additional half hour would be required for the other items. So our recommendation, if you haven't had breakfast, please feel free to come on back in about an hour and a half. Thank you.
talked to Adam. I think it would be good if you could apologize to the public and just say that this did take a little bit longer. I think they understand, but they're a little fussed about it.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, on the opening, at the opening. Okay, just, oh, there she is.
Sorry. I said the same thing.
A motion moved by Member Foster and seconded by Member Fior that the meeting of the Board of Directors of the NPCA reconvenes in open session at 11:45. All those, any comments or questions? All those in favor? And that's carried. And we're thankful to have the public back in the gallery, and we apologize. It did take about 15 minutes longer than we had kind of hoped, but we're thankful that you stayed with us. We hope you enjoyed the park in the meantime. So we have two motions coming out of close, moved by Member Gibson, seconded by Member Greenwood, that report FA 66-19, re-land acquisition be received to remain private and confidential, that staff be authorized to negotiate a land purchase in the vicinity of Binbrook Conservation Area at an upset limit discussed within closed, and that a staff report to the board regarding the ongoing negotiation. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor and opposed? And that is carried. I have another motion moved by Member Foster, seconded by Member Fior, that staff be directed to proceed as instructed in closed session with regards to item 7A, B, and D. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Moving on in, we have a presentation? Okay, so we have a presentation at this time. I'd like to call up Joshua Diamond, NPCA Water Quality Specialist. There we go.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the Mpca board, thank you for allowing me an opportunity to provide an overview of the Mpca Water Quality Monitoring Program, a summary report for the year 2018. As a quick review, the Mpca Water Quality Monitoring Program was implemented in 2001. The mandate of the program is twofold. One, to assess the water quality of our local watersheds. To accomplish this, the Mpca has 80 surface water quality monitoring stations where we collect chemical and biological samples. The Mpca also has 15 groundwater wells where we collect groundwater samples and where water quality is monitored. Since 2001, the Mpca has collected approximately 7,000 surface water quality samples and 275 groundwater samples through this program. It's one of the most comprehensive water quality sampling and analysis programs within the Mpca's jurisdiction. The second component of this program's mandate is to report water quality information to our stakeholders. And this is through annual reporting, such as I'm doing now, watershed report cards, and special studies which are distributed to our stakeholders and the public. The Mpca collects its surface water samples during the ice-free season, usually from March to December, and analyzes for a whole suite of water quality parameters. This table shows a list of the key parameters the Mpca uses for its analysis. These parameters have ecological threshold values, such as provincial water quality objectives or Canadian water quality guidelines. These parameters are sensitive both to rural and urban land uses and commonly used by conservation authorities around Ontario. For data analysis, we've taken the water quality data for each station and summarized it with the Canadian Water Quality Index. The Canadian Water Quality Index was developed by Environment Canada as a tool to transform complex water quality data into understandable terms and descriptions. Water quality can be classified as excellent, good, fair, marginal, and poor based on 3 criteria. These 3 criteria include, number 1, the number of parameters not meeting a water quality objective or guideline. Number 2, the number of times that objective or guideline is not met. And number 3, the extent to which that objective or guideline is exceeded. So we have applied this tool to the Mpca surface water quality data. Based on the results from 2014 to 2018, the current data, 64% of the Mpca surface water quality monitoring stations are rated as poor. Those are the red dots on that map. 23% are rated as marginal, the yellow dots. 10% are rated as fair, the green dots, and 3% are rated as good, the blue dots. None of the stations could achieve the Water Quality Index rating of excellent. The highest water quality ratings in the Mpca watersheds are the Effingham tributary, the upper 12-mile creek in Pelham, the lower section of 12-mile creek in Port Dalhousie, St. Catharines, the Welland Canal, Point Avenue Drain in Fort Erie, Beaver Creek in Fort Erie, the Welland River downstream of Binbrook Conservation Area, and a headwater tributary in the upper Welland River. Based on the data collected today, elevated concentrations of total phosphorus in E. coli are the most frequent and widespread cause of water quality impairment in the Mpca watershed. The relative high frequency and the magnitude of those exceedances are the driving factors in lowering the water quality ratings at these stations. Generally, the water quality ratings at our stations are relatively stable when we look at historic Mpca data. The Mpca also monitors groundwater through the Provincial Groundwater Monitoring Network, 15 monitoring wells. We monitor continuous water levels and temperatures, and these are collected with data loggers that are installed in those monitoring wells. We also collect water chemistry samples in the fall, once a year. Some of these wells were found to have Ontario drinking water exceedances of boron, fluoride, and sodium, but these are attributed to the natural conditions of the groundwater. There were nitrate exceedances, which were found in two wells, and these were attributed to the land use activities in the vicinity of that monitoring well. Follow-up activity by the Conservation Authority, Niagara Public Health, and the Ministry determined that these nitrate exceedances were site-specific to the water well only, and not to the neighboring water wells. So some good news, what I'd like to speak about in this short presentation. This figure here shows total phosphorus concentrations observed at our long-term monitoring station at Beaver Creek in West Lincoln from 2003 to 2018. The red line, if you can make out that red line along the bottom, is the provincial water quality objective for total phosphorus. As total phosphorus data became available for Beaver Creek, it's clear, as you can see, most of those dots are way over that red line. So this watershed has a phosphorus issue. In fact, it's one of the highest for total phosphorus in an entire watershed. In 2009, the Mpca's restoration program specifically targeted this watershed with water quality improvement projects. When we conducted a trend analysis with the long-term phosphorus data, we observed a statistically significant decrease in total phosphorus concentrations. It represents an approximate 14% decrease in total phosphorus in this watershed. Furthermore, this map shows the 23 restoration projects that went into Beaver Creek watershed. These include manure storages, reforestation, stream riparian buffers, cattle fencing, and wetland projects. It's reasonable to conclude that this decrease, at least in part, was due to the focused restoration programs from the Conservation Authority. In 2016, the Niagara region detected the presence of blue-green algae in very small quantities upstream of the water treatment plant intake at DQ in St. Catharines. Blue-green algae occurs naturally during prolonged hot weather, blue-green algae occurs naturally during periods of prolonged hot weather in lakes, ponds, and rivers. And as you remember, 2016 was a very hot and dry year. These algae have the potential to produce toxins and make people sick. At the time of this bloom, the Niagara region called the Mpca and requested assistance. The Mpca was able to provide several resources, such as a boat, sampling equipment, and field technicians. The results from the sampling conducted at this time determined there was no toxins in the water. But this highlights the flexibility of the Mpca's water quality monitoring program, staff and resources to address emerging issues. Queens Royal Beach in Niagara and Lake provides another example of this flexibility of the MPCA's water quality monitoring program. In 2019, very current, Niagara Public Health and the town of Niagara and Lake required assistance to collect water samples from the Niagara River at Queens Royal Beach to assess the water conditions in the beach in order to open the beach for the summer season. The NPCA were able to collect the water samples and provide those samples during our regular monitoring to the public health for analysis. And based on the sampling, Niagara Public Health was able to post those results on the webpage. There's a screen capture there showing that the beach was open for swimming. The data collected through the NPCA's water quality monitoring program is very robust and used by many other agencies. The NPCA receives approximately 50 data requests per year. Our most recent, I would say, big data request was from the Niagara region for the South Niagara Falls Wastewater Treatment Plant Environmental Assessment, where they requested all our water quality data for the lower Welland River. But the province uses our data, consultants, academics, and the public. So our data set is used far beyond us and by many other agencies and of interest. And that concludes my presentation. It's a very brief presentation of the water quality monitoring program. I could go for a long time, given the opportunity. But I wanted to just highlight, and my colleagues, Eric Augustino, water quality technician, he's out there collecting great majority of the samples, and Ryan Kitchen, water resources technician. And of course, our key partners involved in this water quality monitoring program. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation and that update. Some questions from members of the church. I saw.
Go back to that first map, you're monitoring wells. I guess
There it is.
okay. It says, well, that's not the first one. It said Haldeman and Hamilton. Is there any monitoring wells in Haldeman or Hamilton?
There is one well in Glanbrook, yes, right along the rail trail in Hamilton.
Okay.
And there's one right at our conservation area. The one in Canfield, essentially.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, I know where that is. Okay,
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure if there was samples collected in all three participating municipalities. That's
Yes,
all.
and beyond this program, the MPCA, which I am not involved in, but my colleague has an additional groundwater monitoring network of additional 30 wells, which is kind of a little bit behind the reporting my program is at, and they're throughout the Niagara, and so they've boosted. We have like 40 or 50 if you want to include those into the groundwater monitoring network.
Thanks.
Thank you, and through the chair to Joshua, thanks very much. I've enjoyed your report, and it'll be a long learning curve for myself, and I have a couple of hopefully straightforward questions. How does your work relate to the source water protection group?
So through the chair, we are separate but the same. Source water protection mainly deals with drinking water. So this certainly is not related to drinking water. The MPCA water quality monitoring program is more of ambient or general conditions of the MPCA watershed creeks and rivers. Most of the drinking water comes from Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, Niagara River, the Welland Canal. I do have a monitoring station on the Welland River or on the Welland Canal, but we don't usually monitor the lakes. We don't monitor the Niagara River directly. Okay. So, but we do feed some information. I've done presentations at the source water protection. Ultimately, this water drains into the lakes, the rivers, and therefore what we're doing to our watershed will possibly impact in the near shores of a lot of the Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, and the Niagara River.
Thank you, and through the chair again, I read frequently in the press about the predictions for the blue-green algae for Lake Erie. Now, this is primarily the western basin. Is the NPCA, do you work with groups or a coalition on the phosphorus loading in Lake Erie, the blue-green algae threat in Lake Erie?
Through the chair, yes, we do. We provided all our Lake Erie is the Lake Erie Basin portion of Niagara is a very small, most of the drainage is very small, but we actually have a large number of monitoring stations along in the Lake Erie drainage basin. So that data has been provided to the Lake Erie groups that are involved in like the projects that you're mentioning. So we've provided our total phosphorus data. We're hoping to be more involved. We were less involved at one point, but we're hoping to be more involved directly participating in those groups.
Thank you, and I'd also like to thank you for pointing out a targeted program in the Beaver Creek area, and with your graph there, because I may have comments later on with another report about targeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other members? Member Smith. There you go.
Thank you. Josh, I'm wondering, would it be you or your section that deals with the Port Colborne quarry issue and the landfill? And I'm assuming that, from what I know, and I know very limited at this point, but if there's a proposal to fill a quarry and it has the potential to affect groundwater, is that then your department that would be asked to comment on that? Or is there another part of the Mpca that would make that comment?
Through the chair, no, that wouldn't be me. I think it would, if it was going to come to us, it might have come to us at one point, but I believe I'd have to defer maybe to the director for sure. But if I was to take a guess, it might have been through the old MOU we used to have, and maybe our hydrogeologist at the time might have added comments to that. But I'm not sure to this point. Maybe
Mr. Chair, if I can, I don't seem to have a microphone, but I have a booming voice. Our Director of Watershed, thank you, Renee. Our Director of Watershed Management and his team are preparing comments to respond to that in the very near future. And if you like, I'm sure the Director could make some preliminary comments. We need a new system.
Nobody wanted to hear me speak anyway, so through you, Chair. We do have a report coming out. We're hoping tomorrow, working with our Manager of Planning and Regulations on finalizing our comments, along with our source water protection representative. When it comes to filling in of a quarry, it falls under the Aggregate Resources Act, which actually ends up being exempt from the Conservation Authorities Act, unless there's changes to site plans where we can provide comments. It may be in an area where we're still trying to determine where we can and where we cannot provide information on. But I can make that, when our comments go back to the city, like I said, I'm hoping by the end of the day, I'll make sure that it's copied to Grant to send out to the board as well.
Yep, go ahead.
I believe this will be for you, Josh. I just want to ask, so in your efforts to improve water quality, I'm assuming that therefore you would work very closely with the restoration, because I know that they tend to go hand in hand. Do you feel that the resources are there? It's not a fair question, I know, but because there's never enough resources, and I get that. First of all, am I correct to assume that you work very closely? Your data feeds a lot of the restoration work? Is that the way it works?
Through the chair, correct. We often worked hand in hand with the restoration program. You got to think. I think of the water quality monitoring as your blood test, your yearly physical of the watershed, and the restoration is your prescription to do something, to change something, here, a health. So we're the blood test of the watershed. Restoration is the exercise to fix the condition, and so they work hand in hand. Yes, correct.
I'll end it there. The next question about resources, I already know the answer. There's never enough resources, and it's beyond your control. So,
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can answer that question for you. Absolutely. Once the water quality people do their work, Then normally, it is handed over to the restoration group, and they can take that information and target and priority on restoration program. As the board would know, the restoration program was virtually eliminated in the last number of years, and we have reconstructed it in the last few months. You'll have a report in front of you today, and during budget consultations and discussions in the very near future, we would like to augment that program, and the board can certainly provide advice at that point in time.
Any other comments or questions for the presenter? Go ahead, Member Zalepa.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So I just want to thank the staff for being responsive in some of these matters and questions I've received from the public. So thank you through the CAO. My question is really around the restoration. I'm really pleased to hear what I just heard because I'd like to understand. How is this compare with the rest of the province? And I don't expect the answer maybe today, but maybe you could give us some context. I'd like to know where we sit there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd be pleased to answer that question because it's a particular passion of mine. It depends on the Conservation Authority. If you take a look at the Grand River, for example, Lake Simcoe region, they have extremely robust restoration programs that, as Josh indicated, you can see just with the one sub-watershed where you target restoration, you're going to see results in improved water quality. So it really comes down to the Conservation Authority, and what is even more important is the participating municipalities feeling that that is a program that they want to support in terms of having the staff go out and do a restoration program with the community. So we compare poorly to some conservation authorities, credit Grand Lake Simcoe, Toronto, but we're probably a little bit better than some of the others that don't have restoration programs. Our feeling is in the Niagara Peninsula, we need a restoration program that is robust and accountable for water quality improvements.
Thank you for that. So just further than that, other than being on our website with this report, how do we get that message to the municipalities that are in our watershed? Because this is not acceptable, obviously, and more resources are required. So we're going to need collaboration and input from municipality. How do we get there?
I might just say it's working with building relationships and working those partnerships. It's really that simple. We have a trust that we build with the municipalities, and in time, when we have proven that we're responsibly taking care of our watershed from our end, and the data collection is as he said, a good monitor to that. Then we work those relationships with the region and Hamilton and Haldeman to get these improvements made. So it's time and good works.
So is this get communicated to our municipal partners? I'm assuming it does.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It has to be communicated specifically to our municipal partners in terms of funding requests and business cases. We have to demonstrate to our municipalities the need and the investment and the value for investment. The other important thing about the restoration program, so other than communicating through budget discussions, is also to work with our communications department to get the message out to people, to the community. Josh does a lot of speaking engagements, I know that. That is another important component of the restoration program, but absolutely critical to the restoration program is our partnerships, because we work with leveraged funding. So when we bring money to the table, it's important that we work with partners, not just our regional municipalities and our separated cities, but also the community members to work together to do a restoration program. So the first thing we have to do is make sure we have a robust restoration program, which we're rebuilding right now. Then go to our member municipalities for some funding to support it, then build the community partnerships and the communication around the restoration. And as Josh would tell you, the continual feedback of here's what we're doing, here's how we're improving, needs to be communicated through performance measures to the public.
Member Beatty?
Just to follow up, the CAO funding, you anticipate funding for this new restoration initiative will come out of special levy or general levy?
The province has just approved Bill 108, and they have indicated that there are 3 primary mandates at this point in time: flooding, land and land management, and source water protection. That everything else at this point in time would be a negotiated mandate, which means that we could not take it out of general levy, but we would need to negotiate a special business cases or special capital levy with our participating municipalities to support the program.
So the restoration program funding will come from special levy?
Correct.
Thank you.
Member Mackenzie?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to Josh, or the acting CAO. I think, Josh, I heard you say about a report card. Is that a published document?
Through the chair, yes, it is. It's the Watershed Report Card is actually an initiative by all conservation authorities, and it's standardized reporting across Ontario. So virtually about 30 of 36 conservation authorities produce a Watershed Report Card. It's released simultaneously. We released it in 2018, was the last Watershed Report Card, every 5 years.
Okay, so my question is, was that report card, how was it distributed, or specifically, was it distributed to the municipal politicians, councillors, and regional councillors?
I'm going to ask the CAO too.
How was it?
I might need to, Josh, I don't know if you've got the answer, either you or our manager of communications.
Oh, there we go. Through the chair, at the time we printed a small number of Watershed Report Cards. A presentation was delivered to the board, I believe, and it was on our website, and it also went through Conservation Ontario. Conservation Ontario had I think it was called Watershed Checkup, and it was a large website where you could see how they basically took our data set and put it in larger map in context of the province. So it was about 2 or 3 different ways it was kind of rolled up at that time.
Chair, my concern is that, or my hope is that the report card could get wider distribution, especially with our funding municipalities.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I believe that our communications specialist may have an answer on that. And Member Mackenzie, I couldn't agree with you more. This is an issue that's been brought up by the Auditor General, and it was not a particular issue that I believe we paid as much attention to in the past as we should have, and we want to dramatically improve that. If I might, Mr. Chair?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Member Mackenzie, at the time when it was published in 2018, it did become available on the website. It was also published on our social media, which has a great reach. And in addition to that, we did have a newsletter that we would populate on an ongoing basis. I believe it was monthly. And we do have a subscribers list of about 2,000 to 3,000, and that included at the time every politician, every municipality. So that was sent electronically to them. We just didn't send them via mail.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the presentation? Thank you, Mr. Diamond, and appreciate you making the presentation. I have a motion before me, moved by Member Greenwood and seconded by Member Gibson, that report number FA 5719 Mpca Water Quality Monitoring Program Summary Report for the year 2018 be received for information. Any comments or questions? All those in favor and opposed? And that's carried. At this time, order of the day demands that we feed ourselves. So we're going to take a break for allow 5 minutes to grab some food, bring it back to your, and then we'll resume. And at that point, we'll just, we'll do some introductions. So take 5 minutes and grab some lunch, please. I have a motion, so all that other stuff was just for your information. Moved by Member Ingrao, seconded by Member Greenwood, that the minutes of the NPCA full authority meeting dated May 3, 2019 be adopted as presented. Any comments or questions? Member McKenzie.
Thank you, Chair. In the minutes on page 10, under new business, it mentions about a report on Member Height's request about an apology to Member Hodgkin. I didn't see that in the minutes. Will it be addressed at this meeting?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Staff were directed to investigate that. We have done that investigation. We need to bring that back to the board members in closed session, and we are anticipating that we will do that at the July meeting.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions with respect to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. We have in your package, there's a correspondence from Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing regarding Bill 108. Did you want to speak to that? Moved by Member McKenzie, seconded by Member Ingrao, that the correspondence from Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing regarding Bill 108, More Homes, More Choice Act 2019 be received for information. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. I have at this time some chair's comments that I'd like to make. Just briefly, because I know time is of the essence. On May 14, I had an opportunity to cut a ribbon at the Binbrook Treetop Trekking, and I have to write that out because I can't say it, you know, like it's a tongue twister, but Member Johnson was also present. She actually suited up in the harness and suspended herself from trees and zip lines, and to say the least, it was a little bit amusing. May 17, the Oniakra Geopark stakeholders meeting took place in this building, and it was a good, vigorous opportunity for the Mpca to host and show support for the Geopark that's been proposed, the Oniakra Geopark. May 29, I had an opportunity to attend the ribbon cutting ceremony at Pastone Mental Health. They have a healing garden that was being opened, and the NPCA made a contribution. And there were some staff members there, and some of the members were there. Member Ingrao was there. Member Greenwood was there. Oh, there. Okay, so Member Gibson was there, but left before I attended. So that was on May the 29th. On June the 10th, I made some opening comments at a new member orientation. So the 4 members were brought up to speed by staff, and that was just a brief an opportunity. And on June 18, yesterday, Madam CAO and I traveled a day late, I might add, right through the excitement of Town Hall. The traffic was much improved by yesterday, but still quite dicey. To meet with Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Rod Phillips. So we had an opportunity to give an update on the status of the NPCA and the direction that we're headed, and he was greatly encouraged to hear that we're getting our conservation house in order. Those conclude my remarks. At this point, I have an opportunity for the CEO to make comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Because we are concerned about time today, I think that I will not provide any updates. I think they all will attest in the staff reports today what the staff are doing.
Thank you. At this time, I have a motion moved by Member Metcalf and seconded by Member Shurton that the following items be received for information. A, the minutes of the council meeting of 119 of Conservation Ontario, dated, number 1, in 2019, dated April 1st, 2019. B, the report FA 59-19 re risk-based plan permit compliance. Report C, report FA 63-19 re 2019 restoration program work plan. D, report number FA 65-19 re Niagara Region new official plan draft watershed planning discussion paper. E, report FA 70-19 re NPCA 2018 FOI annual statistics. Report F, report FA 71-19 re communications update May-April 2019. G, report number FA 73-19 re update Auditor General report recommendations. Any comments or questions? Member Mackenzie.
On FA 6319, with the restoration program, I have a number of questions, and considering the amount of or lack of time that the board may have this afternoon, I'm wondering whether that questions to this report and for the one to do with the new official plan for the region of Niagara, whether there would be time at the July meeting for more detailed questions about it, or are you willing to entertain some questions at this time?
Questions at this time?
Thank you. I'm going to try, if I may.
If I might, Mr. Chair, sorry, Member Mackenzie, which staff member is prepared to address the questions on the restoration program? Would that be the senior manager or the restoration team? Restoration team, Stu and Steve, would you like to, excuse me, Mr. Chair, would you like to come to the podium, please, so that you could answer the questions for Member Mackenzie? They're a team. They can toss it back and forth who's going to answer the question. Thank you.
I really enjoy the fact that the restoration program is coming back to light or life. When I read through some of these reports and the response, and I apologize if I cover two reports at the same time, I see words like revitalize and reestablish relationships with the region. But I don't glean a history of why we're using words like reestablish relationships. And I'm looking for, I guess, is a history, and I may not be able to get it today, but a history of why are we reestablishing relationships? Where are they broken? Or when were they broken? What was our previous role? And this is more concerning when I get into this official plan draft watershed planning discussion. There's a tone through these reports and letters, and I'm especially concerned about reference to 2011. There seems to be a divorce from watershed planning at that time. So I like the direction this is going. Very, very much, but I think I would appreciate at some time history as to what our previous responsibility was, what it is today, and also I'd like to see that it's clearly delineated in light of a statement in one of the reports about unknown future of municipal governments in the region of Niagara or within the region of Niagara.
Okay, so I'm going to
Thank you.
pass the floor over to the CAO, who can address largely, because I think Stu was sweating there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be succinct and direct to the point. The previous board of directors had different priorities. That is quite clear with the strategic plan that they approved. There was more a priority around land and tree planting, than there was with regard to restoration, watershed planning, etc. The current board of directors, and certainly myself as acting CAO, believes that that was a program that those programs should not have been eliminated. They were. So we have been trying to revitalize them. We're not creating new programs. We're just bringing back programs that were disposed of by the previous board. And there were a series of layoffs over the last 8 years in relation to our environmental specialists and our restoration people, and certainly our lead role in relation to watershed planning. We have to completely reconstruct that right now. We are doing so. One other piece of advice is that we do need to rethink our strategic plan. This board of directors needs to rethink its strategic plan so that we can get clear direction as staff as to what your priorities are. And I know that's a brief history. Member Mackenzie, I'm always happy to sit down with you, with the team, and go over that in more detail.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Stu Beattie. Just push the button. There we go.
Yes, I have a question too on the restoration program. And I call your attention to page 32, where it says Appendix 4 and Appendix 5 are the draft agreements for the landowner and draft agreement for the partner. If you look then to page 55, you'll see that restoration program application, very clear on what that form is. When you move to page 58, this is the Appendix 4, the agreement between the landowner and the NPCA. It's not clear on what it is. You're not spelling it out. There should be a continuation of restoration program agreement between so-and-so and so-and-so, and likewise, on page 61, Appendix 5, memorandum of agreement, NPCA and the partner organization, but it too is part of the restoration program. All three of these should flow and be identified clearly as what is needed in the restoration program, and you're not doing it.
Gentlemen?
Through you, Chair, we can make those changes immediately.
Thank you. That was easy.
Any other comments or questions on these items? Member Wright. Okay. Great, thank you. Member Beattie.
Hey, while I'm on the run, the report FA 6519, page 67, Niagara Regional New Official Plan, et cetera, et cetera. I take it from reading the financial implications, and I just want to be assured that it will be referred to the Budget Committee?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried.
Good job.
Thank you, gentlemen. Moving right along. We have a motion moved by Member Shurton, seconded by Member Metcalf, that the minutes of the Watershed Floodplain Committee meeting dated June 13, 2019 as tabled be approved. Any comments or questions? Member Whalen. He apologizes. Member Wright.
Oh,
Yeah,
there
there
is.
you
Is the current floodplain mapping for Welland River, is it going to be or has it been peer reviewed? The 2010 was, and my own opinion is that for such a complex system as the Welland River, you really need a third-party engineering peer review to stand up for public review. And so I just a comment and a question if that's being done or not. Thank you.
Director Watershed Management, through the chair.
Through you, Chair. At the present time, it has not been sent out for a third-party peer review. It has been reviewed by the in-house engineer, and everything met the requirements that way. If it is the board's direction to have it peer reviewed, by all means, we can go to bring that back as well.
There, just to make it clear, if I might, Mr. Chair, the issue of the Welland River flood lines have been certainly going on, as you would know, Member Wright, for about 8 or 10 years. We did have the members of the public very concerned about those flood lines. There was a meeting with the consultant and the public/board member committee last week. And I believe that there was direction given, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chair, to start preparing for those lines to go out for public consultation.
Yeah.
So if there is to be direction for a third-party review on the engineering flood lines, we do have one consultant and we have our in-house folks that have reviewed it. If there's direction for a third-party consultant, we need that immediately so that we can not proceed with the public consultation prior to getting a third-party opinion.
Through you, Chair, if I could put a motion to have the third-party review, I really think it's important. I think one of the reasons the 2010, which was actually a very good model and passed the peer review, by the way, one of the reasons that fell off the rails was partly because it didn't have a peer review, and I believe the public was a little bit skeptical. It just adds that much confirmation that the model is a good one.
It's a motion. Do I have a seconder? So the motion is that this watershed report get peer reviewed, essentially?
Yes, by a third party.
By third-party peer review?
Preferably, if possible, the consultant that did the peer review for the 2010 model, so there's a consistency there.
Yeah, so the seconder was member, yeah, I had member McKenzie, so thank you. Yeah, so we're going to have a discussion on that. Member Gibson?
So the first thought that comes to my mind is timing, expense to this. Can we have staff look into that and come back to us? So I don't have any idea what that would cost.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Member Gibson, I would completely agree. I am not in a position to give you any advice on that right now, and either in terms of timing, how that may impact the public who were at the committee meeting and did provide direction in addition with our board members in that regard, and in addition to any costs that may or may not be budgeted for. So if the motion does carry, I would need, well, my recommendation is that staff be given the opportunity to respond to you, to give you our best advice on that.
Member Beatty? Okay. Yeah.
This thing's been going on a long time. 2010 was proven to be a flaw.
No, it wasn't. It was peer reviewed. It was actually part of the
Whoa,
professional.
through the chair,
Anyways.
please. Through the chair.
Sorry.
We'll refer to staff for comment. The firster was Mr. Wright, the seconder was Mr. McKenzie.
Mr. Chair, and I'm going to refer to the clerk on this. He's already on it. There was a mover and seconder for the motion. It needs to be voted on unless it's withdrawn. Am I correct, Mr. Clerk?
I think you can have a motion to defer it to staff.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's a non-debatable.
Referred to staff, the matter deferred to the next meeting, referred to staff, so.
Okay, so Member Beatty is moving to refer to staff, defer to the next meeting. Seconded by Member Foster. That's not debatable. It's not really anything to say. All those in favor? And opposed? Okay, that's carried. So they'll report back.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to put that one in there as well. Moving on, we have a motion. Yeah, Member Steele.
Thank you. Only because I do have to leave. Can we do you mind jumping to item D, FA 6219 about the standing committees?
F.
Because that does concern a committee that I chair. So I do have to leave at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
Please, thank you.
Here we go. I think that's Member Whalen's if I reflect upon that. And we have to have another seconder. Member Selepa has left. Can I have, I'll read it out. It's been moved by Member Whalen that report FA 62-19 NPCA Standing and Ad Hoc Committee NPCF update be received for information. 2, that the Water Quality Improvement Grant Review Committee and NPCA Conservation Biannual Tour Planning Committee be dissolved with responsibilities for this initiative shifted to NPCA staff with reporting as required of the Board of Directors, that the following 2 board members be appointed to the Cio Selection Committee, and that the board member John and Grail be appointed to the Watershed Floodplain Committee for a term consistent with the other board members appointed to the committee. Member Steele, could you second that? Yeah. Okay, Steele. So we need 2 people appointed to the Cio Selection Committee. Do you have anybody who would like to make a nomination? Member Beatty and Member Foster. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, so with that, now that we have the 2 members, can I have Grant contact the 2 members? We do have a meeting coming up tentatively for next week. I think we have
28th.
The majority that are still on the board able to make that, so our 2 new members know what's going on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a motion moved by Member Smith, seconded by Member Shurton, that report number FA 5519 Ontario Power Generation Memorandum of Understanding be update be received. 2, that the Board of Directors authorize the interim CAO Secretary Treasurer and Chair to sign the Memorandum of Understanding included as Appendix 1 to report FA 5519 with OPG. Any comments or questions? Go ahead.
During the discussions, was there any conceptual back and forth that, because I've always been of the opinion if we spend it, we would get more. And the previous boards resisted this. Was there any indication that if we spend it, we'll get more?
To the Director, please.
If too many mics are turned on, it doesn't enable another person to unmute their mic.
Through you, Chair. There was discussion that that OPG is amenable to further projects after this funding has been exceeded. Yeah.
Okay.
You're welcome. No, after they are amenable.
Amenable.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Okay. Let's spend. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? And opposed? And that's carried. Moving on, I have a motion by Member Steele, seconded by Member Wright, that report FA 60-19 re NPCA Planning and Permitting Policy Housekeeping Amendment be received. 2, that the proposed changes under Section 1 of Appendix 1 of the Planning and Permitting Policy Housekeeping Amendment be approved, and that a manner of public consultation described in this report for the proposed changes under Section 2 of Appendix 1 be approved. And 4, that subject to Recommendation 3, and having considered all public comments, Mpca staff be directed to bring the proposed changes as amended via consultation under Section 2 of Appendix 1 to the board for consideration. Any comments or questions? Members, Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question on this. I believe it was under this report that they talked about the development setbacks. And the minimum setback right now is 6 meters. They were recommending reducing that setback, and this was a valley slope setbacks, reducing that to 3 meters. And I don't know if the right subject matter expertise is in the room. The language that they use is that 6 meters was too restrictive, and I was hoping I could get some examples on why we want to change that. Why is 6 meters too restrictive?
I'm over here.
Oh, here he is. He's right beside me. Moved over. Go ahead.
Through you, Chair. I would like to call on our Manager of Planning and Regulations, David Deluce, whose report this is attesting to.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, some examples of why the setback may be seen as too restrictive is if you have a smaller building, like a garden shed or something like that, a little structure you get from Home Depot. Technically, those structures would fall into this setback in situations where you have lots that are essentially the site disturbance has already taken place. Those are the type of situations where we want to have the ability to entertain those type of proposals rather than being too hard on a small-scale proposal like that. I would also remind that the policy does have a section that speaks to proper geotechnical engineering review. So typically, if you get something of a larger natured structure, you would have to do a geotech report in order to demonstrate that slope stability isn't going to be compromised.
So if I can follow up just for clarification, because what I heard, I think that's really good. My concern is that I know, I won't even speak about its specifics, but developers, let's say large-scale developers who may want to be as close to the slope as possible because they perceive it as adding value to their development, whether it's the view or whatever. So we are definitely talking about small-scale garden shed type of encroachments and reducing the setbacks there, and anything else. Am I correct to assume that it's just dealt with on a case-by-case basis then? And I don't know who I should be looking at. I guess I should be looking at.
Yep. Staff? Yep. Go ahead, Dave.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's the best way to describe it, is that these would be dealt with on a site-by-site basis. The policy doesn't, rather than getting into outlining all the possibility or possible examples of small scale, it would be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. Again, some of the larger developments may have a small amenity structure or something that may want to go closer to the slope that, again, we just want to make sure we're consistent with allowing those small scale or those small natured structures to be, that we can entertain them at a staff level. Otherwise, the policies might tie our hands.
I wonder if we can change the language. I just see a lot of potential loopholes. And we have a case in St. Catharines that I'm very familiar with, where a large-scale development was built right on a slope. I don't want to go into how this came to be, but if we had the proper language, you know, if somebody puts their garden shed too close to the slope, I understand it. It's not that big an issue. But if somebody else wants to move a 20-story apartment building closer to the slope, it is an issue. I'm struggling, not knowing the answer, but feeling like this language causes me a problem.
I don't know if there's
Mr. Deleuze? David, through the chair, if I might, because there's continuing dialogue on this, would you mind coming to the podium so that we can have you front and center, and that you could, between yourself and the director? Thank you. Mr. Deleuze, did you hear the question, and can you respond to that?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, with respect to changing the wording, we can entertain that if that's the board's wish. I would just want to point out, though, that one of the changes we're proposing in that policy, you'll notice it says in red, outside urban areas. So we have two policies that deal with reduction of setbacks or how close you can develop to the slope. For areas outside of an urban boundary, typically you have larger sized lots. You would generally have more room to accommodate, say, for example, a house or something like that. But again, these opportunities where you have small scale structures, existing site disturbance, and you want to be able to at least entertain those structures going closer. In urban areas, there is a separate policy in the document, and it was essentially a carryover from our previous document, just reminding the board that this policy document was adopted September of last year. And in the other policy section for urban areas, it does allow a reduction basically as close as the top of slope. And the intent behind that policy, from my understanding, was to help accommodate intensification and infill development in urban areas where the province is directing intensification and growth. So it was the Conservation Authority's way of trying to find a compromise, I guess, to help facilitate development. It's not meant to allow large-scale structures. It's still subject to proper engineering studies to demonstrate that there won't be any long-term impact, negative impact to the stability of the slope. So, but again, I would look to the board for direction if they wish us to explore different wording or something like that.
Mr. Chair, I believe the Director of Watershed Management may have a recommendation for the board to consider.
Through you, Mr. Chair. What we could do is, instead of having recommendation number 2, which proposes the changes of section 1, appendix 1, be a housekeeping amendment, make all the recommended amendments as part of public consultation to allow the public to completely comment and bring everything back to the board to review wording to update the document that way.
At this point, if you wanted to make that an amendment to the motion, this would be your opportunity to do that. Member Smith? Yeah, Member Smith.
I would like to make that an amendment to the motion.
Okay, can I have a seconder? Okay, Member Steele, second. So on the amendment, any other comments or questions on the amendment? Member Metcalf on the amendment?
Member Shurton.
Sorry, Member Shurton on the amendment?
I know, it's getting so long, you're starting to forget whose name's out here.
Yeah,
Let's get
trust
rolling
me.
here. Anyways, my thoughts are, we got engineering that approved things. All we're doing, adding this amendment, is we're adding red tape. I will not be supporting it.
Okay, any other comments or questions on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. Opposed? And that's defeated. The original motion is as before us still. The original motion is before us. Any other comments and questions on the original motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you, Mr. Deleuze. Item D we already did with. So I have a motion here moved by Member Wright. I'm going to read it and then I'm going to look for another seconder. That report FA 64-19 re NPCA drone policy be approved, and 2, that the NPC Board of Directors authorize the NPCA to integrate the NPCA Drone Company Operations Manual into the NPCA's organizational policies. I'm looking for a seconder on that. A member in Grayo. Any comments or questions? Member Beatty.
There was a great deal of discussion about drones in the last board. We started out by hiring the service, and then we bought drones and decided to do that service in-house. And since then, drone use has become more complicated. The training, the documentation, the permission, it's all getting more complicated. And I'm wondering if staff would take this back and review it from the perspective of what is more cost effective? To have our own drones, our own training, our own documentation, and like how many times do we really use it in a year as opposed to purchasing the service? Which is the cheapest and best way to go for this organization? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, if I can direct that please to our acting senior manager.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Chair, we can absolutely do that. I just want to remind her the importance of the Wainfleet Bog and why we have it in the first place, so that our staff at any point can locate the fire. So I do think it's that important for our staff to be in control and have it. And those were the reasons to begin with. But I can do a cost analysis for it. I just think getting a third party, or we can have it any second. We can be at that bog. Getting a third party, the timing, it might be too late.
It's about emergencies.
I understand that, but if you have one on call, your staff may not be available. You're only training a few people. Your staff may be on vacation. Your staff may not be available. Then you're going to have to go anyway. So you might as well have a contingency plan that you can get that service quickly.
Thank you for your concerns. I don't know if you want to conclude.
We can put together an analysis for you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the drone policy? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Moved by Member Beatty, seconded by Member Wright, that report FA 67-19 Mpca workplace harassment policy be approved. 2, that the existing workplace harassment policy dated September 16, 2016 be repealed and replaced with the Npca workplace harassment policy attached hereto as Appendix 1. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Motion moved by Member Gibson, seconded by Member Greenwood, that report number FA 68-19 Npca recruitment and selection policy be approved. 2, that the recruitment policy dated May 16, 2016, be repealed and replaced with the Npca recruitment and selection policy attached hereto as Appendix 1. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor and opposed? And that is carried. I have a motion here moved by Member Beatty, seconded by Member Greenwood, that report FA 72-19 corporate work plan June-December 2019 be received and approved. Any comments or questions? Member Smith.
I have a question about the work plan because, and I don't know if I'm out of order in this, but next meeting, I want to bring forward a motion. The notice of motion is in already that I believe is going to somehow work in, I hope, let me say, is going to somehow work into the priorities of the Mpca, and so therefore may also work into the work plan itself. So I'm not sure if we should have that discussion now or if the work plan needs to be discussed next month. There's a disconnect here, not anybody's fault. It's just the chronology of events has created a disconnect. I'm looking for some thoughts or advice on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. through some discussion with Member Smith on the intent of his notice of motion, is for the Conservation Authority to become more engaged at this point in time with regard to climate change. I've had a conversation with Member Smith, or a couple, and thank you for that, Member Smith. I would have to say that if the board directs staff to become more involved in climate change at this point in time, it will impact on the work plan. We can defer your endorsement of the work plan until next month. That is certainly fine. In the meantime, however, what I'm looking for as the acting CAO is I need to have work plans endorsed or approved by the board so that at the end of December, I have something in which to assess the performance appraisals and performance measurements of the senior staff. If the board agrees, we're happy to defer this until July, understanding that the work plans that are in front of you right now will proceed over the next month, particularly in relation to the direction of the Auditor General. That's critical. A lot of the work plan is responding to recommendations of the Auditor General, and we certainly would place that as a high priority, that we have to continue working on that. So we're at your direction, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
The other, I'd just like to say that the other option is to approve this, and if we have an amendment, like because of ongoing discussions, if there's an amendment that needs to come back in July, that might be a better way to go, and just make the amendment to the work plan at that time, depending on what other decisions.
I'd be comfortable with that as long, I just want to confirm that that doesn't add an extra burden of needing a 2/3 majority or something.
No.
If we're amending the work plan.
No.
That it would still, then I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. I don't know that signature. I have another motion here moved by Scribble.
That's John Grayo.
Oh, member Grayo. He's got a worse one than Foster.
He's not listening.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry, we're not there. Okay. Okay, so at this, we've dealt with closed session already, so we have a notice of motion by Member Smith, Climate Change Emergency, and the NPCA. At this time, just looking for a little bit of direction how to.
Member Smith has indicated that he would like to put forward a notice of motion. My understanding is Member Smith to be considered at the July meeting. However, Mr. Chair, I think it's appropriate for Member Smith to speak at this point in time to the notice of motion that he would like to bring forward.
Member Smith, you have the floor.
I'd like to think that basically the notice of motion does speak for itself. I'm not suggesting that the motion is in its final format. I think that we can get it there as a board. But I just think that as being the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, we are the lead environmental agency in this watershed for, environmental issues. And we have not yet started to address in our language the global crisis that is going around. And I would put out this one example of the cost of us not speaking about it as an organization. 3 months ago, I think it was in March, I was on that side of the floor at that time, the vehicle fleet came up for renewal. And this is the time when it's hard to be on that side of the tape and sit on your tongue, because the discussion about what should we do with the vehicle fleet was about SUVs, 3-year contracts and 5-year contracts. Not once did we, the Conservation Authority, talk about the need to move towards low-emission vehicles or zero-emission vehicles in order to start reducing carbon footprints around the Niagara watershed. That's the type of dialogue that needs to be affected throughout this whole organization. That's the type of mindset that needs to be coaching our decision-making. And we, as the Conservation Authority, I think it's incumbent on us to start thinking and talking that way. And that is the purpose of the notice of motion that I've put out there.
Member Foster?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just maybe out of this, can we give some direction to staff as well to come back with a fulsome report on this for us so that we can discuss this with the knowledge and information that we need at our next meeting?
He's written it down. The staff will come back. Oh, did you vote? Okay. Oh, did you have a, yeah. Okay. So any other comments or questions?
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
No, I don't think so. Notice of motion. Okay, so that will come back. The discussion will take place in the July meeting. Yep. Yep.
Just as a point of order, for future reference, I'll refer to the clerk, but notices of motions usually stand for the next meeting. You do not discuss it at this meeting.
No, that's correct.
So that was incorrect procedure that you just followed.
Oh. Thank you for that. Just an announcement, yeah. I just entertained the announcement. Okay. Yeah, okay. Anyways.
Yep, thank you.
All right, any other new business? Member Greenwood, Member Foster. We'll go with Member Greenwood first.
To let you know that I have been replaced by Niagara Falls. Another member will be coming in from Niagara Falls. That happened on the 4th of June. But I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank everyone and all those members around this table and those that have been replaced up till now for having the opportunity to help make a difference here at the Conservation Authority. And I wish you all the best in your matters going forward. And I'd also like to thank the staff for their assistance and everything that I've needed in these past 6 months. But I want to thank you very much again. I'm not too sure whether I'll be here at this next meeting or not, so I will follow whatever direction comes by my way. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Greenwood. Yeah. Okay, the CAO wants to weigh in on that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you for your lovely comments. And to all of those members that are outgoing, it has been a real privilege for me to work with you. We need some stronger clarity. Your regional councillors at the table. The motion that we have received from the region of Niagara was that the 4 public appointees that are sitting at the table right now came into effect, they said immediately, which is Councillor Engreo, McKenzie, Smith, and Fior. And they are therefore at this table. The motion that the municipality also put forward is that Councillors Balsma, Foster, Gibson, Greenwood, Hewson, Steele, Whalen, and Zalepa, you are extended for an additional 3 months from the date of this regional motion. And during that time, your municipality can recommend appointments to be sent to the region prior to that date. Our understanding from this motion is that you will carry on up until the term, the 3-month term, which I understand is the middle of August. I did have a small discussion with some of the board members out there. It's our sincere hope that if the region doesn't approve the new appointments in, I would call dribs and drabs, because every time a new appointment is approved, we need to have an orientation session with that member or series of members. Our understanding on the motion, and if you could get that clarified with Regional Council when you deal with this, is that the remaining 8 people are in place until mid-August. The region will then vote on those replacements, and those replacements will then come forward at the next meeting, after which they are appointed by the region. We will also be pursuing that discussion with the municipal clerk in order that we're very clear on the direction of the region. Thank you.
Member Foster?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At our meeting where we had the Auditor General, Councillor Height, or Member Height at the time, I believe, put to some degree a notice of motion concerning an apology to Bill Hodgson from the town of Lincoln, who was noted within that report that he did nothing wrong based on the Auditor General's report. So
You must have been out of the room. We dealt with that earlier in this meeting.
Did we?
Yes. Member Mackenzie.
I was out of the
brought-
room. Okay.
Yeah, okay. So it's
So
going
are
to
we
come
doing
back
it?
in July.
Oh, it's coming back in July.
Just a staff report will come back in July on that issue.
I missed that. It's such
Yeah.
a long meeting. Thank you.
Yeah. It was a long meeting. He's just making it funny. Yeah. All right. Any other new business? Member Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this thing's working. I'd like to duplicate or reiterate what Councillor Greenwood said. If by chance I'm displaced, okay. So being that's the case, if or if not, before I leave, I just want to bring a motion to the floor about a board member that has been here for almost 24 years. It might or might not be replaced from the City of Thorold. Board member Mickey DeFruce was here just shy of 25 years. And I'd like to ask for a motion to be put on the floor, second by Councillor or Member Beattie, that he be issued a temporary or memorial, or however we want to call it, board membership here to get his 25 years in. If you're talking to staff around his table or anybody's worked with him for the last so many years, he's a storehouse of knowledge and he still has a lot to add to this conservation authority. So I'd ask for some kind of a motion that we put forward that he be an honorary member to get his 25 years in.
Excellent. And it was, you had a seconder in Member Beattie. Any comments or questions on that? So we're basically, the motion reads that the staff will come back with a way to
incorporate them into this.
Incorporate them in,
That's right.
okay.
That's right.
All right, the staff will do that. All those in favor? And that's, any opposed? That's carried. We'll work on that. And I'm pleased to entertain this last motion, moved by Member Ingrao, seconded by Member Greenwood, that this meeting of the NPCA Board of Directors be hereby adjourned at the hour of 1:26. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. That was a marathon session. There you go.